No one expected a lavish wedding to be interrupted by the scream of a 12-year-old girl. In a candlelit hall filled with soft piano music, where the groom, Mr. Nathaniel Rhodes, a successful businessman, stood smiling and ready to walk down the aisle, a voice suddenly pierced the air like a knife. "Dad, don't take it out. That handkerchief. It's poisoned." Guests froze in shock. The girl Eliza had jumped to her feet, her hands trembling, face pale with fear. She pointed at her father's chest, where a neatly folded white handkerchief peeked from his tuxedo pocket. "I saw it. Last night." "She dipped it in something in her room," Eliza said between gasps. "It was smoking and burned her hand." The groom turned to her, confused. His fiancée, Ms. Cassandra Albrecht, a poised, elegant woman, maintained an eerily calm expression. She stepped toward Eliza and spoke sweetly. "I think Eliza is just nervous. Children have vivid imaginations." But not everyone believed that. Some guests began whispering. A waiter noticed something no one had paid attention to earlier. Cassandra's hand was lightly bandaged. And in that moment when vows were supposed to be spoken, a seed of doubt was planted. No one spoke, but the way people looked at each other began to shift. Cassandra kept smiling. Her smile was soft as velvet, but to Eliza it felt cold as glass. The woman knelt to the girl's level and gently placed a hand on her shoulder. "Sweetheart, maybe you just remembered wrong. That handkerchief was a gift from your mother, wasn't it?" Her mother's name. Mentioned at the worst possible time, like salt pressed into a wound barely healed. Eliza recoiled. "Don't say her name," she snapped, her voice cracking. "You don't have the right." The air stretched thin like a violin string wound too tight. Nathaniel the father stood frozen. The smile had vanished from his face. He leaned down toward his daughter, his voice barely audible. "Are you sure?" Eliza nodded, slowly, but with certainty. A guest in the front row shifted in their seat, eyes now fixed on Cassandra, the woman struggling to maintain control. "Her hand," someone whispered. "There's a bandage." Now Nathaniel saw it too. He didn't reach for the handkerchief. No one said anything. But in that heavy silence, it became clear something serious was being hidden. And Eliza, the child they thought was just imagining things, might be the only one who truly saw the truth. After minutes of tense standoff, the wedding ceremony was quietly paused. No official announcement was made, but everyone understood. There would be no vows exchanged today. Eliza walked beside her father, her small hand still clinging to the hem of his shirt. Cassandra remained behind, trying to maintain composure as skeptical eyes began closing in. Nathaniel led his daughter into a small room behind the banquet hall, the bridal suite meant for pre-ceremony preparations. "Tell me everything he said," voice low and steady. "Every detail." Eliza swallowed hard, her hands trembling. "Last night, I had a stomach ache. I went to the kitchen to get warm water. When I passed her room, the door was slightly open. I saw her doing something with your handkerchief, doing what he asked, his voice darkening. She dipped it into a cloudy brown liquid. It was steaming. It burned her hand, but she didn't scream. She just bit her lip and wiped it with another towel." Nathaniel fell silent. For a long moment. "Are you certain?" he asked again, not out of disbelief, but out of fear. Fear that he'd trusted the wrong person. Eliza nodded. Without another word, he stood and walked over to the dressing table, the one Cassandra used to store her things. He began opening drawer after drawer. Then the final drawer slid open and Nathaniel froze. Inside was a small metal box locked shut. But next to it, lay a single latex glove stained with a reddish-brown smear, dried but unmistakable. Nathaniel stared at the glove. The thin rubber had turned grayish with age, but the reddish-brown stain across it, though dried, sent a chill down his spine. Eliza stood behind him, clutching the hem of her dress. She said nothing, as if the truth no longer needed her voice. "You were telling the truth," Nathaniel murmured, almost not believing his own voice. He took the glove out, then opened the small metal box. Inside was a tiny glass vial tightly sealed. Its label had been partially scratched off, but one line in shaky handwriting remained: VXCN7, 0.5 ml. Extreme caution. His heart pounded. Nathaniel wasn't a doctor, but he had invested in biotech startups. He knew what VX was. This was a neurotoxin. He placed the vial back inside and shut the box. His voice hoarse, he turned to Eliza's sweetheart. "I need you to stay quiet for now, at least until we leave here. She wanted to kill you," Eliza whispered, her eyes brimming. "No," Nathaniel said calmly. "She wanted to erase a memory and take the place of someone I lost." Silence filled the room. Then he spoke again slowly. "We're not going back to that ceremony, but I won't leave this place until I know why she did this." Because for Nathaniel now, the question was no longer, "What's going on?" It was, "Who is Cassandra Albrecht?" Really? Nathaniel left the room with the metal box in hand. His face had hardened, no longer the joyful groom, but a man who had just discovered he nearly married someone who planned to kill him. He called the only person he still trusted Wesley Quinn, a former private investigator now head of internal security at Rhodes Group. "Wes, I need a background check," Nathaniel said urgently. "Name Cassandra Albrecht. Everything: medical records, passports, identity, medical transactions. I need to know who she is, and who she used to be." There was a pause on the line. Then Wesley replied, "Give me an hour." Meanwhile, Nathaniel returned to the wedding hall. Most of the guests had already begun leaving. Cassandra was still there, standing in the nearly empty room, like a statue carved from pride and control. Their eyes met. Cassandra smiled, not sweetly, but with the confidence of someone daring him to dig deeper. "You're not going to ruin everything over a child's imagination, are you?" she said softly, her voice honeyed. Nathaniel didn't answer. He glanced at her hand, still bandaged, and turned away. A few hours later, the call came. Wesley's voice was low and firm. "There are no medical records under the name Cassandra Albrecht for the first 10 years of life. Social Security number is a reissue. Fingerprints match an old file, but not for that name." A beat of silence. Then Wesley added, "Her real name is Selena Varick, a lab technician fired from a VX neurotoxin project in Prague. Disappeared after a toxic leak investigation in 2016. Nathaniel felt his throat tighten. So the woman he was about to marry never even existed. Nathaniel entered the hotel suite where Cassandra, or rather Selena Varick, was waiting. No candles, no guests. Just two people standing face to face in a space that now felt more like a courtroom than a honeymoon suite. She remained calm, pouring herself a glass of wine, eyes never leaving him. "So, you found out Selena spoke first." Her voice no longer sweet. It was sharp like a blade skimming stone. Nathaniel placed the metal box on the glass table. He said nothing. "What are you going to do?" She raised an eyebrow. "File charges." "Call the police, fine. But do you know how many powerful men once funded the VX project? They'll erase every trace of evidence before my name is read a second time."
"Why did you try to poison me?"
he asked coldly. Selina looked him dead in the eye. No denial, no evasion. "Because you're Nathaniel Rhodes, the man who never lets the past see daylight, the man who buries every mistake your company ever made to protect your image." Nathaniel stiffened. "I never even knew you." "But I knew you," she replied. "The day you cut funding to the Prague lab, you signed my death warrant. They blamed me for everything. I lost everything." She stepped closer, slowly, deliberately. "Eliza saw me because she's not poisoned by arrogance like you are. But don't blame her, because she's the reason I changed my plan." Nathaniel clenched his fists. Rage and fear surged, but he stood firm. "You don't get to use a child to cover your revenge," he said, voice low and steady as steel. Selina chuckled softly, refilling her glass. "No one gets to have the right, Nathaniel. All we have are weapons, and the weaker one always loses." "No one gets to have the right, Nathaniel. All we have are weapons, and the weaker one always loses." Selina's words hung in the air like a verdict, but before Nathaniel could reply, the door behind him creaked open. Soft footsteps barely audible. Eliza entered. She wore her father's long coat, her expression tense, but her eyes unwavering. In her hand was a small object, a silver USB drive. "Dad, I'm sorry," she said quietly. "I didn't tell you everything." Nathaniel turned to her, startled. "I found this in her room," Eliza continued, "the night I saw her dip the handkerchief into that liquid. I hid it. I was afraid you wouldn't believe me. Unless I had proof." Selina's face tensed. She took a step toward Eliza, her voice suddenly soft. "Eliza, listen to me. You don't understand what you're holding." Eliza stepped back, hiding the USB behind her. "I understand more than you think." Nathaniel raised his hand, calm but firm. "Give it to me." Eliza walked over, placing the drive in his palm as if handing him the final key to every locked door. He plugged the USB into a laptop. The screen lit up. Within seconds, video files appeared. VX Human Trial Number 04, Selina V. Personal Log. Exposure Report, 2016 leak. In the videos, a younger Selina appeared in a white lab coat working in a facility. Footage showed employees coughing up blood alarms, flashing warnings about chemical exposure, and finally, a recording of her voice, "I don't believe in containment anymore." VX is a weapon, and if they dare bury me, I'll dig their graves first. The room fell into stunned silence. Selina stepped back, her chest rising and falling. The calm mask on her face had been replaced by raw, visible desperation. Nathaniel stood, his voice ice cold. "That's enough." Then he turned to Eliza. "You saved me, and you saved people you'll never even meet." When the final video ended, there was nothing left for Selina Varick to say. The police were called. Nathaniel handed over all the evidence, the USB, the sealed VX vial, and the forged identity records. Selina didn't resist. She merely gave a faint, crooked smile as the handcuffs were fastened, as if some twisted part of her felt seen. On her way out, she turned back to look at Eliza. There was no hatred in her eyes, no rage, just the look of a woman who had once believed no one would ever believe her, and had now been undone by the only person who did. Weeks later, a video of Eliza's testimony before Congress was viewed millions of times on social media. She stood in a pale blue blazer, small and solemn, in front of a row of powerful officials. I don't know anything about science or weapons. I just know. When someone does something wrong, you have to speak up, even if no one believes you." The chamber fell completely silent. Then a senator, one who had previously voted against protections for child witnesses, quietly placed his hand over his heart. On the day Nathaniel dropped Eliza off at school again, he bent down to adjust her backpack strap and whispered, "You don't have to be a hero. Just keep being yourself." Eliza smiled, a soft, steady smile no longer trembling, because she knew from that day on, truth wouldn't be something only adults carried, and justice. It didn't always thunder like a storm. Sometimes. It began with a little girl's voice in the middle of a wedding and ended with the silence of everyone who had once looked the other way.